Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving deep into a 2,000-year-old legal debate about a single drop of blood. Now, I know it might sound a little obscure, but trust me, this is a masterclass in logic. We're entering a world where the tiniest details can flip an entire argument on its head, and the reasoning is as sharp as a razor's edge. So, here's our roadmap for breaking down this incredible logical puzzle. First, we'll set the scene in the high-stakes world of temple ritual. Then, we'll watch a fundamental dispute unfold between two legendary schools of thought. But just when you think you've got it figured out, we'll see how a single question changes everything. That leads to a brilliant new system of organization, which of course, then gets stress-tested to its absolute limit. All right, let's start by stepping into the world of the ancient temple in Jerusalem. And you got to forget any modern ideas of close enough. Here, ritual precision is everything. I mean, it's like the operating system for the entire spiritual world, where every single action, every word, every substance is governed by this incredibly exact set of rules.
And this obsession with the small stuff, it's really the key to everything we're about to talk about. You might be wondering, why focus on such tiny details? Is this just some kind of ancient bureaucracy, or is there something deeper going on? Well, as we're about to see, for the sages of the Talmud, these details weren't just noise. No, they were the very building blocks of a logical, consistent, and meaningful universe.
So this intense focus on detail perfectly sets the stage for a classic showdown. We're talking about two of the most famous schools of thought in Jewish law, the school of Shammai and the school of Hillel. And what are they about to go head-to-head over? Something that sounds impossibly small, a single drop of sacrificial blood.
The context here is a specific ritual. It's called a sin offering. Now, the rules say the priest is supposed to place blood on all four corners of the altar. Simple enough. But the debate is about what happens when things don't go perfectly. You know, after the fact, if a mistake was made, what is the absolute, non-negotiable, bare minimum number of placements you need for the ritual to still be considered valid?
And their positions could not be more different. Beit Shammai, that's the school of Shammai, they hold the line. They say you need at least 2 placements for the offering to count. But Beit Hillel, who are often known for a more lenient approach, they argue that if the mistake's already been made, just 1 placement is enough to salvage the ritual and make it valid.
So for Beit Shammai, the line is bright and clear. 2 placements. Anything less than that and the whole atonement is incomplete. End of story. But for Beit Hillel, 1 is enough. Yeah, 4 is the ideal, but a single completed placement saves the ritual from being a total failure.
So the battle lines seem pretty clear, right? Shammai is strict, Hillel is lenient. Case closed. Well, not so fast, because a later sage, Rav Ashaya, enters the conversation, and he looks at this neat and tidy little debate and realizes something is deeply wrong. He's about to turn the whole thing completely on its head. Rav Ashaya points out this brilliant paradox. He basically says, wait a minute, everybody knows Beit Shammai is almost always the stricter school, so why isn't this case listed among the super rare exceptions where they're the lenient one? And he points to a related law about having improper intent, like thinking about eating the sacrifice at the wrong time. In that case, Beit Hillel invalidates the offering after just 1 placement, while Beit Shammai waits for 2. All of a sudden, Beit Hillel looks stricter. The logic seems totally flipped.
And this forces us to ask a much deeper question. Was our initial framing of this debate even correct? Is it possible that lenient and strict aren't fixed labels, but actually depend entirely on the context and the specific question you're asking?
And the answer, which comes from the sage Rava, is just stunning. He explains that we've been asking the wrong question the whole time. The original debate wasn't about the minimum for the owner's atonement. No, it was about the minimum for the priest's permission to eat their share of the meat. And from that perspective, Beit Shammai's rule requiring 2 placements is actually much stricter. It makes the priests wait longer. It turns out, the definition of strict and lenient was all just a matter of perspective. Now, this reframing solves one big problem, but it opens up a whole new can of worms. And to untangle this new mess, a master organizer named Rav Papa enters the scene. He looks at all these interconnected rules and decides, you know what, it's time to build a system to make sense of all of this.
So Rav Papa focuses on this new logical puzzle that comes right out of Beit Hillel's position. See, if only the first drop of blood is essential for atonement, then what exactly are the other 3 drops? They still have to be placed on the altar, but what's their status? Are they still fully holy, or are they just leftovers? This ambiguity has massive legal consequences.
Rav Papa's solution here is incredibly elegant. He argues that this extra blood actually has a dual status. For some laws, it's treated exactly like that powerful essential first drop, a status he calls kethilato, which means like its beginning. But for other laws, it's treated more like the less critical leftover part that gets poured at the base of the altar, a status he calls kesopho, or like its end. And right here is his organizational genius in action. Look at this. He sorts this whole web of complex rules into a clear, coherent framework. On the left, in the like its beginning category, you've got the laws where the extra blood is treated as fully sacred. It can't be offered outside the temple, and this is crucial for where our story is going. If it stains a priest's garment, that garment has to be laundered. On the right, like its end, are the laws where it has a lesser status. He's basically created a unified theory for leftover blood.
Now, creating a neat system is one thing. But come on, this is the Talmud. The sages are not just going to accept it. They're going to do what they do best. They pick one item from his list, just one, and they test its logical foundations absolutely relentlessly.
And the one item they zoom in on is laundering. See, Rav Papa placed the rule about laundering stained garments in the high sanctity column, so the other sages immediately challenge him. Can you actually prove that? Where's your source that this so-called non-essential blood is holy enough to require a whole garment to be laundered?
So Rav Papa brings his first proof. He starts with a law everyone already knows. Blood that has already been properly placed on the altar corner no longer requires laundering if it splatters. From this, he makes an inference. He argues if the blood after the ritual is exempt, it must mean the blood that is still fit for the ritual, our extra drops, is not exempt. Therefore, it does require laundering. Seems like a pretty solid deduction, right?
But his logic gets shot down immediately. The Gemara, which is the record of these debates, completely dismantles his argument. They show that his method of inference is flawed. Why? Because if you apply that exact same if A then not B logic to another, similar law, it leads to a conclusion that is just demonstrably false. So the logical tool itself is broken. His proof is rejected. It's back to the drawing board for Rav Papa.
So the debate drills down even deeper. First, someone points out that Rav Papa's proof would only work if he's relying on the minority opinion of a sage named Rabbi Nehemiah, which is a pretty shaky foundation to begin with. And second, even if you grant him that, the sages ask, Rabbi Nehemiah was talking about the major offense of offering sacred blood outside the temple. How can you prove that his ruling on that topic has anything to do with the much smaller issue of laundering a garment? The connection just isn't there.
Finally, after all the logical acrobatics, the debate gets settled not by inference but by authority. A baraita, which is an older teaching from outside this particular section of the Talmud, is brought in as evidence. And what does it say? It states explicitly that this type of blood does require laundering. So in the end, Rav Papa was right. His system holds up even though his first proof for it failed. The conclusion was correct, but the reasoning had to be perfect.
Okay, so having gone through that incredibly intense logical exercise, from a dispute over one drop of blood, to a total reevaluation of perspective, to the creation and stress testing of a complex system, let's zoom out for the final takeaway.
So what can we really take away from this ancient debate? Well, it's so much more than just a history lesson. It's this timeless example of the human drive to build order out of chaos. It shows us that creating any system of meaning, whether it's in law or science or philosophy, it requires an almost superhuman attention to detail. You have to be willing to question your own assumptions, to redefine your most basic terms, and to relentlessly test every single component until you can prove that every piece, no matter how small, fits perfectly. It's a 2,000-year-old masterclass in how to think.